So this is a native tree. So it's native to sort of river plains, lowland areas. That's where it really likes to grow in really rich, fertile soil. You can see they get enormous. This is a small one. You know, I know where the 8th largest one in Pennsylvania is, and 3 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. You know, and that's just the 8th largest one. But identifying characteristics of it, besides that it's a giant tree. You can see that exfoliating bark turns almost pure white up on the younger branches, but then down here it becomes kind of gray and blocky, a light gray blocky bark. It is considered a messy tree because the bark does exfoliate in these giant peels, and then they get their leaves out again later in the season.
Let's see what it looks like.
And then you can see the fruit. The
Mommy
fruit.
wrote sycamore.
So the other one way to know that this is a sycamore is if you look at the fruit, they're on a long stalk, and there's only 1 per stalk. If this were a London plane tree, it would have 2 per stalk. The London plane tree is used more often because it's disease resistant. It doesn't get that anthrax. So this is Stewardia pseudocamellia, the Japanese Stewardia. And if you can imagine, in the summer, this tree gets giant white flowers that look like fried eggs, kind of white petals with big yellow centers. And it's really stunning. They're followed by these capsules. You can see there's one at the end here that kind of hang on through the winter. But this bark is what's really beautiful about these, and even when they're young, they exfoliate. So here you see the bark has these salmon, tan, pinkish, reddish colors, and the bark looks kind of muscly. It's very smooth, except for the exfoliation. And I think probably one of the most favorite trees on the campus is the one behind you. So this is lacebark pine.
It's called a lacebark pine.
Yeah, so this is Pinus fungiana. So evergreen, of course.
Oh.
You have to hold it
has
still.
this great bark, kind of looks like camouflage as it's peeling off. So it's all different shades of green, brown there. So,
Okay.
what's that? Pinus.
So interesting. Look at that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it looks like a deer.
Find it? Any
Looks like a
suggestions
deer
for
with
better
rubbing.
weather from all years? You can see that foot kind of upright, growing. So this definitely 4 seasons of interest, right? Because it's got the great bark, but it's also evergreen. And do you all know how to tell different pines apart? So the number of needles in a bundle is how you tell pines apart, and the fact that the needles are in bundles at all tells you that it's a pine.
And if it's evergreen like this and it's not a pine, what is it?
It could be a spruce, it could be a fir, it could be, you know, any of a Douglas fir, you know, any of those other evergreens, but only pines grow in these bundles like this. Yep. And then the number of bundles help you identify. So here we have, this is Heptacodium myconoides, so H-E-P-T, Heptacodium. This is called Seven Suns flower, or Seven Suns tree. So you can see here the bark actually exfoliates in long vertical strips. So some people might think it looks shaggy or messy or unkept, but other people might call that interesting, not exfoliating. You might have ridges and furrows. And ridges are the raised part and furrows are the depressed part, right? And so those can have different colors, different textures, and different shapes. And so we identify bark that way. The dots that you see here on the tree, these raised parts, these are called lenticels, and they're like pores on our skin, so they exchange gases and moisture in the environment for the tree to breathe. And these lenticels are horizontal stripes, and that's a good clue that this is probably a cherry tree. Now there's some birch that try to trick you to thinking it's a cherry, but this is a cherry with a shiny bark and these horizontal lenticels. That's a good indication that you have a cherry here. Now this one is very old and sick, but still good. Still flowers like crazy, and good example of bark.
Cherry's not good for wet areas.
No, generally not, and they do tend to be short-lived. So less than 50 years they'll tend to live. This one is the exception to that rule, but yes, not wet areas and full sun, generally full sun. Although you can find some that'll do okay as an understory. Here I have a cluster of 3 native trees. These are musclewood. Caroliniana, I think that's called. But it's called musclewood because you can see that, well, A, it's very hard, and a very strong wood. But when they try to use it to build, to make tools and things like that, you couldn't get a lot of lumber from these trees because the branches the trunks are so small. But it is very durable. But you can see it also has these kind of sinewy, almost like buttresses. Here, you can see they look muscly, like muscles flexing. So that's why it's called muscle wood. So you'll find this in the woodland as an understory tree. You have been here before. Yeah. They were flying in and out of it all summer, and we just left it because it's part of nature and they belong here and it's okay. But just wanted to point that out to you. But these are London plane trees. So these are the ones that are planted now generally instead of sycamore. They have the exfoliating bark, but notice that they're very green or olive or cream colored as you get higher up. And also notice that they exfoliate all the way down to the base. Remember the sycamore had sort of blocky bark, from about here down. As it gets older, these don't. These just stay exfoliating all the way to the base. And so that's one good way to tell sycamore from a London plane tree.
I'll pause.
That's a good word too. So this is Xanthozylum, so it's the last one on your list. That's because they chew on the berries and it numbs your mouth. Yep. So this is a native. Another name for it is prickly ash because it has leaves that look like ash. And these are just outgrowths of the bark, the skin of the plant. So they're technically called prickles, not thorns or spikes or spines. And it's just protection. So it's a good time to talk about what's the purpose of bark on a tree. To protect it, right. Bark is protecting. And so all of these different forms of bark that you see are all evolved as protection. So if you're deep and furrowed and ridged and exfoliating, it's really hard for an insect to get in there, right, and do any damage. And if you are trying not to get eaten or bitten or cut down, that's a good way to do it. Right there. So this does seed around. It is native, so it's these red berries are finished now, but the red berries you can chew on and it numbs your mouth. Differentiated cell growth, kind of like a tumor in a person, is a burl. It doesn't hurt the tree at all. It's normally a reaction to some damage or some insect or something like that. But it's just aesthetic. It's not a problem on the tree. Some people actually cut them off and then turn them into bowls and things on plates. And that might hurt the tree. They don't get nearly as big as the Asian persimmons that we get in a grocery store. They only get about this big. And the more disgusting they look, the more likely they are to taste good. If they look pristine and perfect and shiny and bright orange, don't eat it. It's like chewing on chalk. It'll just suck all the moisture right out of your face. So, very distinctive bark on these though. So you can see here, they're kind of blocky, dark gray with these orange furrows in here. And as these get older, the bark almost starts to look like charcoal briquettes. So blocky and so dark, become very distinctive. So you can grow these for the edible fruit. They tolerate a lot of conditions. You do need male and female plants to get the fruit on these. But regardless, they have these big green shiny leaves. They're really nice tree to have. They do get quite large. I've seen them this big around, 50 feet tall, 60 feet tall. So they could be a shade tree for them too. They tend to grow narrow. I have been inside this research garden and always made the assumption that this tree was some kind of birch or maybe a cherry. But Ben told me yesterday that this is actually a lilac. Yeah. So this is the peeping lilac, Syringa pekinensis. There. But you can see this great part that they're really only interesting for like 2 weeks. That's it. They really don't do anything else. Then they're just a green blob. They don't even get a good fall color generally. Sometimes they have cut leaves, so that's kind of nice. And they have a fragrance, which is great, but only when the flowers are there. So this is a lilac that has more than one season of interest. So this is pretty exciting.
Does this get flowers.
Yes, so it does, but it doesn't flower like you think of like the purple lilac. If you're familiar with Japanese tree lilac, which get more tree shaped and then have white flowers later in the summer than our purple lilacs do, that's what this does. So it gets these white flowers later, and they are fragrant, but you can see the bark is pretty spectacular. I mean, it's shaggy. So these, I think you do anyway. So these are Kentucky coffee trees. So Gymnoplatus dioicus on your list starts with a G. So these two are male and female, so not all of the trees will get these pods. These pods, when they get them, they tend to hang on through the winter. And then as soon as the new growth starts to come out in the spring, all the pods fall off. And the pods are filled with this green slime and seeds. And I like to call this a mastodon tree because actually this is a relic, an ecological relic. There's nothing here now that eats these pods. But back when we had giant sloths and mastodons roaming the area, these fed those those animals. So they could bite into this thick pod and digest that thick green slime and process that giant seed through their body with no problem. We don't have any animals now that can do that. So this is an ecological anomaly tree. So maybe you can come back with your dogs for our mastodon walk because we've got more of these trees around that we can do. So yeah, so white flowers and then these great pods.
Let me see.
It is green slime.
Oh, yeah.
It is nasty. Ew.
All right, let's eat it.
Actually, it doesn't smell bad. It smells kind of like
Don't eat it, Daddy!
smells like a persimmon.
People don't like this tree.
It smells kind of fresh. It's not unpleasant.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Let's eat it.
Doesn't make me want to eat it, but
That is a very strange looking
Wanna
seed.
try taking a seat?
Yes. So this, it's a native tree. It's a very important part of our ecosystem. It's native around here to kind of lower areas, rich woodlands, floodplains, that kind of thing. They're called river birch, which might make you think that they really want to be someplace wet or near water, and they do like that, and that's their preferred habitat. These plants are really adapted to a wide variety of soil, moisture, and conditions. So you can, I've had them planted in the middle of a brownfield in the city. You know, it's just, it does really well, and there's different cultivars that do better. But this, as they get older, they lose their exfoliation and start to just be a kind of dark gray trunk. But you can always look up the trunk and see the exfoliation. So if you see this kind of very like papery flakes of this orange and tan colors, you can be pretty sure that that's river birch. They generally do grow in clumps. Sometimes you'll see them single stem, but a lot of times you'll see them sold multi-stem. This is probably the most often misplanted plant because people buy it small and they think it's going to stay small. But this can be, I've stood on trunks that my feet, you know, just fit in, I have giant feet, just fit in the center of, you know, they can get really large. What's nice about these, as opposed to the white birch that has that smooth white bark to it, is A, this bark is more interesting in my opinion, but B, they don't get the diseases that those white birches get. So they get bronze birch borer and birch leaf miner. These do not get that. They're resistant to those common birches. It also is a stormwater management garden where you can see here we've got water under the boardwalk. So it collects stormwater off of the property and has it set right of ways, kind of barren areas. It gets covered with blue fruits.
Blue fruit?
In the summer into the fall. And it does have this really, if you have to limit up or, you know, you can check it out. It has kind of a reddish, stringy
Cold.
The winter and the dormant season, they have catkins, which are sort of those little fork-like things coming off of it. Those are they will flower later in in the spring. They'll flower. So that's our river birch. We're gonna come.
She likes that chair.
Your list either. I should have put it on here because this is great. This is such a great multiple season interest plant. But this is Paradia persica, or Persian ironwood. And so it's related to witch hazels. And if you're familiar with witch hazels, these look very similar. You can see this is a large tree. And if you get up close, you can see that there's sort of like brown, velvety, dark brown, almost black, velvety, round buds on the branches. If you want to see some great examples too, besides this one, which is pretty excellent, on either if you go into the entrance of Longwood Gardens, as you're walking into the main entrance of the visitor center, on the right-hand side, there's a beautiful example of this too, and it's actually been trained into a single trunk. If you take a look, it almost looks like ski trails coming down the bark. If you're used to looking at a mountain, you know, and you see the ski trails in the distance, or right-of-way cut lines, you know, where they've kind of taken all the woods away to put the power lines through, it kind of looks like that on the bark. It's hard to see up close, but when you're a little farther away, you do notice the ski trails in the bark, and so that's a good way to ID Quercus rubra from a lot of the other oaks around. Compared it to the kind of really dark blocky bark right here of chestnut oak, which is right behind us. Beech, right, so this is the American beech. The other one we saw was European beech. So the American beech has leaves with kind of sharp points around the outside, where the European beech had wavy edges. And if you take a look at the twigs, which you can see some over here, if you take a look at them, they're very rough. And that's how you know that they are, how this is, one of the ways to know that this is an American beech. Look at this one. Yep, you have the smooth gray bark, just like elephant skin there. Yep. This is our American beech. We have acorns around here. Big sawtooth
Beech,
oaks.
American
yeah, they get
beech.
these big, hairy acorns. Yep, that's okay. And then here, over here, you can see
Look, Mommy, this looks.
Oh, well, let me see. Ooh, look at that interesting acorn cap.
good news, this one last. Japanese Zelkova serrata. And they have these tiny little leaves, you can see here. These are also used for street trees because they have small leaves that are easy to clean up. They're tolerant of all kinds of soil conditions. They're used as street trees a lot too because they have this upright vase shape, so they don't interfere with cars, car doors with street flowers before the leaves come out in the spring. Really is an understory plant or edge of the woods plant. It wants that rich soil, it wants some shade, it wants well-drained soil. If it doesn't drain well, it's going to get diseased. And so you can see the buds on here, kind of flat top, rounded, almost shaped like an onion. And that's a good ID for it. But also the bark. So the bark kind of looks like alligator skin in that it has these square blocks. And it's very, very rough. So up here you can just kind of see that it's all broken up into little blocky squares. And this kind of solid gray color. Doesn't really exfoliate or anything like that. But it's very identifiable, recognizable in the woods. If you're hiking, you can start to look for this alligator skin. This small squares broken up on the bark, and it'd be a good clue that it's a dogwood. Now, of course, many of you probably know the dogwoods and their flowers. They get great red fall color and red fruits that the birds love to eat. Another great wildlife plant if you're into that. So now we're going to go. Groundhog lives in there. So, not on your list, but just caught my eye, so I thought I'd point it out. This is a honey locust tree. So, honey locust is another mastodon plant. It's these giant pods. See some of them still hanging from the tree. And this one, if you look here, it gets these giant thorns also. So its scientific name is Triacanthos, which means three thorn. And the thorns actually have thorns, right? So normally has three. This one is missing one. So this whole thing is a thorn here. And this was to fend off the mammoths, right? They have giant mouths. So they needed big thorns to protect themselves from the charismatic megafauna of the ice age. You can see these very flat plates that get thick and kind of peel off. So this will flower white in the spring. There's flowers that smell like honey, and then followed by these pods, which some people do consider a mess. And then again, people tend to plant these in areas that they don't realize that the tree will get this big. And we found out this insect called the debris-carrying lacewing larva. So it actually takes pieces of the tree and sticks it to itself, and then walks around so it can sneak up on other insects. And so they were all over this. So if you just stand there and take a look, there's just moving very slowly, little green pieces and little orange pieces. Fascinating. Well, thank you again for coming along. Hopefully this gives you something new to look at in the winter garden and when you're out on your hikes and your walks with your dog. And I certainly hope that I'll see all of you back in here with your dogs just walking and enjoying the Arboretum. So
Wait, I could remember by the book.